Hello, how you guys doing? Good day to you. Um, Hope you're having a beautiful afternoon or morning or whatever your time you see this video. Um, I gotta tell you a story, and this story is going to tell the story. You know, sometimes when people say something prophetically, um, it really comes to pass. And I'm about to show you some example on this video with this. Shout out to this subscriber. I think his name is African Streamline, and he got this man prophesizing what's going to happen to America and what has been happening. I don't know if he made when the man made the video last year, but I'm going to show you the result of what is happening now as this man speaks. People think that that's just hearsay and things like that. So let the video tell you a story. I'm not gonna play too much of this video.
As a business owner, we have to think of
America, once upon a time, was the most powerful nation in the world, and it was revered by the whole entire world. Today, America has become a laughable matter to the whole world. They received a president that at so many times even forgets his own name. And now, the one who is going to be, who's going for the presidency position, Kamala, then I will choose Joe Biden any time of the day. It is not about Joe Biden. It is not about Kamala Harris or anyone else. It is about the Lord Jesus. You see what happens when you transgress against the Lord Jesus? What happens? Becomes a joke. That nation becomes a joke. That person becomes a joke. And that Satan becomes a joke. Everyone who transgresses against the Lord ends up being the biggest joke ever to exist. See, all these secret societies that have been planning and plotting for centuries to just conquer and control the world. What a joke, man. Honestly, it's a laughable thing. They want to conquer. I'll never forget this. These secret societies, or whoever they are, before they were empires, Roman, Macedonian, all these empires, now they're secret societies. Nothing's changed. Same old, same old.
1 second.
Now, that's the beginning of the story. I don't want to go too deep. It's pretty deep what he's saying. Well, what did he mean by that? So I'm about to show you what he meant by that, and it's happening right now. Watch this.
There's new data coming out this week. It shows a potential financial crisis in the making among American farmers. According to the University of Arkansas, from April of last year to March, more than 250 farms have filed for Chapter 12 farm bankruptcy. That's a huge number. University economists say bankruptcy filings in the first quarter of this year, they've already exceeded last year's total.
Produce 40% more agricultural products in this country than we can consume domestically. 1 in every 4 rows of soybeans in every field in the entire United States of America has to go abroad. China is the largest importer of soybeans in the world. They import 61% of the world's market. Last year we sent around 12 billion, I think $14 billion worth of soybeans the year before. For the first time in 20 years, China's bought 0 soybeans and 0.
And I love those farmers, and we're going to take care of the farmers. There's no question about it. Their crops and their livelihoods have been so badly affected. Swift actions needed to get the farmers access to loans and disaster recovery aid to help them quickly get back on their feet so they can help our nation prosper. I always support our great farmers and agricultural communities, and just go out. I know that the help is going to be there. And
the morning sun had barely risen when the news broke across ports in Lagos, Tima, Mombasa, and Dar es Salaam. hundreds of American cargo ships loaded with soybeans sat untouched, rejected, and left bobbing in the water. The value of those ships, $124 billion, the message behind that rejection. Priceless. Africa had just told Washington, we do not need you anymore. In the heart of Washington, D.C., panic erupted. The president was woken up at 3 o'clock a.m. Wall Street's agricultural indexes began to plummet before trading even opened. Soybean farmers in the U.S. Midwest flooded government hotlines demanding answers. How could Africa, a continent that America claimed to feed suddenly, turn around and shut its ports to U.S. soybeans? But this isn't just a trade story. This is the beginning of the most profound realignment in agricultural and economic power since independence. For decades, Africa was treated as a consumer market for surplus grain and soy-cheap exports dumped into African economies that wiped out local farmers and locked nations into dependency. But today, something historic has happened. African nations are uniting, protecting their markets, and saying, our farmers come first. Think about it for decades. African farmers struggled because imported soybeans were sold cheaper than locally grown crops. Local markets collapsed, food insecurity rose, and rural poverty worsened. And yet today, those same farmers are finally being given the chance to compete on equal terms because their governments have taken a stand against foreign dumping. The global consequences are massive. In the United States, soybean futures crashed by double digits within hours. Some analysts are calling it the single largest agricultural market disruption of the century. Iowa farmers who once relied on African demand are now staring at silos full of unsold grain. Billion-dollar U.S. agribusiness corporations are lobbying Congress for urgent relief packages. American news networks are calling it a catastrophe, while African media is calling it a victory, and make no mistake, this decision was not taken lightly. African leaders did not just wake up one morning and decide to block $124 billion of U.S. soybeans. This was the result of months of secret negotiations, farmer-led protests, and a continental plan to take control of Africa's food future. Deals have already been signed with Brazil, India, and China to supply technology, training, and infrastructure, not just soybeans. Africa is building its own agricultural self-reliance, and that terrifies Washington, because this isn't just about food, it's about power. Control over agriculture means control over life itself. For decades, America has used food aid, grain exports, and agricultural deals as leverage to extract political concessions from African nations. But with this $124 billion blockade, Africa is cutting the puppet strings. Picture the scene right now. African farmers in Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Kenya are holding celebrations. Social media is on fire with images of tractors rolling into the fields, farmers planting soybeans proudly, chanting that Africa will feed Africa. And somewhere in a boardroom in New York, executives at the biggest U.S. agribusiness firms are staring at spreadsheets that now bleed red, wondering how they lost an entire continent in one night. This is bigger than trade. This is bigger than soybeans. This is Africa.
Let me stop right here. What happened when you call a whole continent shithole countries? That got back to them. So guess what? We're turned to the shithole country. This came from our president when it came to the continent. They never forgot that. But yet you won't reign supreme over a shithole country and use your technical skills, your advanced weapons and stuff. Now they're showing you that we don't need you. We got Russia, we got all these other powers. What? But yet that's supremacy for you. Think that they know everything, huh?
Writing its destiny, one crop at a time. And the United States is just beginning to feel the sting of what happens when Africa takes control of its own economy. What happens next will shake global markets, redraw trade maps, and inspire millions of farmers across the world. But one thing is already clear. Africa will never be the same, and Washington will never forgive this. Bold act of defiance. The world woke up to a thunderclap that Washington never saw coming. Overnight, a coalition of over a dozen African nations announced a joint resolution banning the import of U.S. soybeans and soybean byproducts. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. Wall Street tumbled, Farm Belt states went into panic mode, and White House. Advisors scrambled to draft emergency memos. Why?
Y'all black people need to go back to Africa, huh? That shithole where all the animals and and all that stuff? Yeah. Who's the monkey now? Who's the frickin' monkey? Who's the animal now? But the very people some of these people with racist and prejudice, Lord, now they're coming back. but it gets gooder. Watch this one.
Welcome back to Classic Korea, where we break down the most talked about topics in Korea right now. So in our last video, we covered a shocking, unprecedented raid in Georgia, where U.S. immigration authorities stormed the Hyundai LG joint battery plant site and detained nearly 500 workers, including over 300 Koreans. And that number alone was enough to shock the Korean public. Now, a week later, the story feels a bit different. It's no longer just about statistics and official statements. As the workers returned to Korea, their testimonies are surfacing in the media, like stories of overcrowded cells, no translators, people signing documents they didn't understand, and prescription medicines being withheld. And these details aren't just being reported by the K media, they're being spotlighted. And Korean outlets are emphasizing the human cost, like the images that make readers feel the indignity, like people sleeping, standing up at the prison camp, and women breaking down when calls never came, and guards mocking detainees with racist gestures. These are the things that the Korean media articles have been talked about. And this shift matters because the headlines aren't simply about immigration law anymore. They are about humiliation, injustice, and the vulnerability of Korean citizens abroad. And in the way these stories are framed, like sometimes with almost cinematic detail, you can feel how public opinion is being primed, like toward anger, toward suspicion, and toward demands for accountability from both Washington and Seoul, Korean governments. So let's talk about what all these mean, okay, in this video. So let's dive in.
It's nice having someone I can be totally open with.
While they were making noises and trying to mimic them, call them cuckoo chow, and trying to call them Chinese, this is what they're going to say in the video. But they were Koreans, and they speak a different Asian language. One thing I learned, and people got to understand, when people see some of a different race, they try to, and if you or any of the different nationalities, they mock you. You can be from India and they think you're Arab. You can be from Pakistan and they think you're Arab. And then once this is taught here, because this is a historical part of it. They called the Japanese out their name. They called the Vietnamese out their name when they were over there. And they brought that back to their households. And so when the Vietnamese and Japanese come here, their children used to get bullied and beat up, and probably some of them used to get bullied and called whatever that they people taught, to call them out their name. And guess who spearheaded the prejudice? People have the MAGA, the white MAGAs. They were the pre-white MAGAs. And some have Amerasian, have brothers and sisters too. And if you can talk to some down on the home, someone keep it real with you, Vietnam veteran, they'll tell you what they did. Even though it was a horrible thing that there was a lot of men and women that died, but at the same time, while they was over there, they lay down with some of the locals. But when some of the Amerasian children got back here to the States, some of them wanted to be acknowledged. This has happened over to the continent too. They lay down with the local women while they being prejudiced. That's why I say don't mean something because someone has someone different race. Well, I'm not prejudiced just because you lay down with some of a different race. And this is the same thing that they did. I know it's gonna offend somebody, but this is the truth. America is one of the countries that taught how to spew racial hatred at other people. learn racial terms to bring people down. Watch what I tell you in this video. I'm gonna show you. These Korean people never been to America. Guess what? You're gonna see what they said to them.
You know, it's nice having someone I can be totally open with, even if it means we remain perfect strangers.
And Seoul, Korean government. So let's talk about what all these mean, okay, in this video. So let's dive in. So with the first charter flight touched down at Incheon Airport, families and cameras were waiting. That's where the testimonies began splitting out. Sometimes shakily, sometimes with anger, and sometimes with a sense of disbelief that this had really happened to them. So, for example, one middle-aged worker described being handed documents in English with no translation, pressured to sign without knowing what it meant. Later, he says he learned it was a detention order. And for many Koreans, hearing about this, that detail became the headline. Not just workers being detained, but workers tricked into signing away their rights. And another worker said his husband was denied access to the medication he took daily for joint pain. And others recounted how high blood pressure pills and even basic digestive medicine were withheld. And Korean outlets ran with this too, drawing parallels to how easily preventable medical neglect can spiral into human rights headlines. And the living conditions were described as humiliating. Some workers said they shared a single room with 70 to 80 people, and beds ran out, so some people slept on the floor, while others claimed they had to sleep standing up with nothing but a towel to cover themselves against the blasting air conditioning. And that imagery, like standing sleep, towels for blankets, has been repeated across TV broadcasts and online news clips in Korea because it instantly conveys indignity. Again, something that resonates deeply with Korean audiences. And there were also stories of mockery, like a few detainees recalled guards pulling their eyes into a slant, that typical Asian mockery, or dancing in front of them. And yeah, these were also reported, and in print, these moments of racial ridicule were given almost as much weight as overcrowding, and they tap into an emotional nerve that extends beyond the technicalities of visa violations. So for example, let me read you this particular article released by 동아일보, one of the major Korean outlets in Korea, titled ICE officers mocked detainees with ni hao, which is a saying in China for hello, hi, and rocket man jibes, treating them like North Koreans, published on September 15th, 2005.
There is a new push to keep guns out.
And let me say this before it gets back. Did you know in Guantanamo Bay, and I didn't know this, my friend told me this a long time ago. During the 9/11, when they went over to Afghanistan and they claimed that they had I think it was the Taliban at the time, or some Al Qaeda members. Did you know a lot of those people that was down at Guantanamo Bay that they released back to the Arabs was not part of the enemy that was fighting the U.S. Soldiers? They were regular farmers. And what they did at that time was they showed it was a big controversy. They would make them, they would waterboard them. They would have, you seen the pictures of them, had them people up like this, and it was outrage. And this was at Guantanamo Bay. And I think some of the soldiers got disciplined from that, but it wasn't something really big deal. But that traumatized those people, and to come to find out, it wasn't the people that were fighting the Americans in the desert. They went and raided and got a whole bunch of people that wasn't part of it. But wow. But guess what?
So companies are now reporting
3 months worth of inventory sitting at my factory that I cannot bring to the US. I have maybe 2 months worth left in my warehouse in Minnesota, and when that's gone, I have no more revenue. I cannot pay my employees, I cannot pay my bills, I cannot pay the loans which I have leveraged my house against. So we could lose our house. I do not have the $230,000 that were just immediately dropped in front of me to get my products into the US. So I am asking, begging for support from both sides of both parties to support our small businesses and get rid of these tariffs on US-owned small businesses. It doesn't just affect me. When I go out of business, it affects all of those contractors that I pay to help me with my business, all those American-owned businesses, my trucking company that brings me my container, the bookkeepers and accountants and marketing teams that work with me. They now don't get to have the revenue they're getting from me, and I'm just one business that's at risk of going out of business. There are thousands of us, so this is hurting more than just people importing from China.
An AI platform where all your knowledge is in one place. It's a happy place. It's a nice place. Where customer experience solutions are
completely empty. Oh, and I had to go through security 3 different times before I could get to my...
It's hard to believe. These are international airports in one of the most developed countries in the world. It was so quiet, you could hear your own footsteps echoing. No long lines for passports, no pushing and shoving, just empty seats and the cold light reflecting off the floor. A scene that completely contradicts the expectations of anyone who has ever called America a travel paradise. Behind that scene is a staggering figure. International arrivals to the US decreased by over 10% in the past year alone, with once loyal markets like Canada and Germany also turning away. It's not just tourists disappearing, but also hundreds of thousands of jobs, tens of billions of dollars, and even the hospitable image of the United States are vanishing. In other words, the money printing machine called American tourism is stalling. In this video, we'll find out the answer to the question: who are the biggest losers? Politicians, airports, hotels, restaurants, or ordinary Americans themselves? And the final question: is there anyone left willing to pay the price for the American dream? Have you ever been to an American airport and had to squeeze through long passport lines, frustrated by waiting for hours? Believe me, that memory is about to become a thing of the past. Because now, many international airports in the US are so empty that you can hear the wheels of your own suitcase rolling on the floor. It's not off-peak hours. This is rush hour, and the seats are still empty. According to the latest data, the number of international visitors to the US decreased by 14% in March alone, the sharpest decline since the COVID pandemic. It sounds abstract, but imagine if a baseball stadium with 50,000 seats suddenly lost 7,000 spectators, how empty would it feel? Now multiply that number by the hundreds of airports across the United States. That is the gap that the tourism industry is suffering. The shock was even more pronounced when looking at a figure that was once a source of pride. Canada, the US's closest market, saw a drop of up to 900,000 visitors in a single month, equivalent to the entire population of San Francisco disappearing from immigration counters. Germany, the UK, and South Korea also turned their backs together. But why this turnaround? The media often says it's due to rising ticket prices or a difficult global economy. Yes, but that's just the surface. The deeper cause lies in the very image of America. When news spread that tourists were being questioned for too long at the airport over minor visa issues, or that their phones were being searched without cause, the unspoken message was clear. America no longer welcomes you as before. And, in the age of social media, Just one video of a tourist being treated poorly is enough for millions of people.
Get ready, players. Welcome to the Ultimate Cyber Showdown. Each week in October represents a new level to explore, focusing on the threats that matter most. Help your youth
is enough for millions of people to change their travel plans. Additionally, there's a deeply hidden issue that few people mention: immigration and labor policies. When the US cuts back on seasonal visas, many restaurants, hotels, and airports lack serving staff. This makes an already stressful travel experience even worse. International tourists spend money on vacations, but ultimately receive slow service and a cold attitude. A far cry from the land of opportunity they expected. A family in Orlando, Florida, runs a small hotel that relies on European tourists to fill rooms during the summer. Last year, they also welcomed many tour groups from Germany and the UK. This year, bookings are down to less than a third. They were forced to cut housekeeping staff, and their son, who was planning to go away to school, now had to return home to help his parents clean. A typical American family, but paying the price for empty seats at the international airport. And do you know what the most ironic thing is? Americans used to complain about long lines at customs, and now the lines are truly gone. But with them went jobs, income, and the vibrancy of the economy. We're trading convenience for a shrunken tourism industry, a bargain that's too expensive. We're not saying these things to complain, because we are also Americans like you. We've also pulled suitcases through the crowded Atlanta airport and been annoyed by waiting. But trust me, it's better to spend an extra 30 minutes in the passport line than to witness the entire service industry lose hundreds of thousands of jobs. So, the question is, who will fill the empty seats at the airport? Airlines? The government? Or is it you, through rising restaurant bills and local taxes? That's the next part we need to delve into. Let me give you a number that will make you raise an eyebrow. $21 billion. That's right. According to the US Travel Association, that's the amount of money the US could lose just this year because international visitors aren't coming. And don't think 21 billion USD is just a few numbers on a spreadsheet. It's enough to pay for a year's worth of electricity for the entire state of Texas. It's enough to build a dozen new hospitals. But instead of flowing into the economy, that money evaporated with each flight that didn't land in the US. Behind that 21 billion USD lies a whole chain of consequences. GDP is projected to fall by over 23 billion US dollars, and 230,000 jobs are at risk of disappearing. These aren't just numbers, but hundreds of thousands of people, from chefs and hotel staff to taxi drivers and even Vegas performers, all facing the prospect of lost income. But this is the part the media rarely makes clear. The US seems to be shooting itself in the foot. While the government grapples with tariffs, focusing on steel, cars, and agricultural products, it overlooks an extremely lucrative export item: services. And among the services, tourism is the goose that lays the golden eggs. The problem is, instead of taking care of that chicken, we're letting it get weaker and weaker. Let's take Las Vegas as an example. This city once thrived on Asian tourists, especially from China and South Korea. In the past, brightly lit neon signs welcomed millions of visitors. Now, the lights are still on, but the hotel room is empty. Casinos have to cut back on show times, and fine dining restaurants are sparsely populated. A taxi driver in Vegas lamented, "I used to drive international passengers from the airport to the Strip every day. Now it's mostly just local people attending small conferences." The irony is that when it comes to trade, politicians boast about making America rich by imposing tariffs on steel imports or taxing foreign cars. But ask yourself, how many people buy plane tickets just to come to the US to see a rusty steel yard? Steel is in the warehouse, but tourism is what truly puts tens of billions of dollars into the pockets of ordinary Americans. And then, we Americans not only lost money, but also lost America's soft power brand. A friendly, open, and attractive nation. Once international customers turn away, it's far more difficult to bring them back than it is to sell a few more cars. But you know, losing money is one thing. But when 230,000 people, perhaps your neighbors, friends, or even your own grandchildren, face the risk of losing their jobs, that price is no longer invisible. It's becoming clear in everyday life. And the next question is, as service industries fall one after another like dominoes, what will happen to the US economy?
Uline is the leading
More than 300 South Korean nationals detained in a U.S. immigration raid are now back home. They were detained during an ICE raid at a plant under construction in the state of Georgia. It was being built as a joint venture between South Korean giants LG Energy Solution and Hyundai.
It began with images that stunned both South Korea and the United States. Over 300 South Korean engineers and technicians flown in to help build a state-of-the-art Hyundai and LG battery plant in Georgia were suddenly placed in handcuffs. ICE agents arrived with helicopters and armored vehicles, pointed guns, and detained workers who had no idea why they were being treated as criminals. These were not undocumented workers. They were skilled specialists brought in under short-term visas to launch one of the largest foreign investments in America. The sight of them returning home to Seoul with plastic bags carrying their belongings struck a nerve. What should have been a story of cooperation became a symbol of distrust.
The raid triggered an outcry from South Korea, a key U.S. ally, and raised questions about foreign investments in the U.S.
The Trump administration has spent months building a reputation for toughness. Reciprocal tariffs of 10 to 50% have been rolled out. A 100% tariff on imported semiconductors has been announced, with exemptions only for companies that commit major investment in the United States. In that climate, the Georgia raid was meant to send another signal that America would control its borders on its own terms. But the consequences went far beyond immigration enforcement. South Korean companies immediately questioned whether the United States is a safe place to expand. Conservative newspapers in Seoul, usually supportive of the U.S. alliance, openly warned that investment plans could be reconsidered. Families of the detained engineers watched their loved ones return home in tears. In a country where corporate reputation is tied to national pride, the perception that elite workers were chained and mocked by guards was devastating. What was intended as a show of strength quickly turned into a warning sign for global investors. Faced with outrage, Washington tried to contain the fallout. A senior State Department official was sent to Seoul to express regret. President Trump himself posted a message saying foreign companies were welcome and their workers would be allowed to train Americans. Yet his words raised more questions than they solved. He spoke about letting Korean experts teach American workers, then phasing them out. To many in South Korea, this sounded less like an apology and more like a declaration that their people were disposable. The damage was already clear. Public protests in Seoul displayed banners asking whether America was still a friend. Social media in Korea filled with calls for lawsuits against the U.S. government and demands that LG and Hyundai stand firm. Some voices even urged reciprocal measures against Americans working in Korea. Instead of reassuring one of its closest allies, the administration had created a storm of resentment. In diplomacy, words matter, but so do actions, and the actions in Georgia cut deeper than any tweet could repair. The Georgia incident is more than an isolated raid. It highlights the contradiction at the heart of current U.S. policy. Washington is demanding that allies like South Korea commit hundreds of billions of dollars in new investments to qualify for tariff caps. At the same time, it is allowing immigration crackdowns that humiliate the very workers needed to make those projects succeed. For South Korea, which already pledged a $350 billion investment package, the raid exposed the risks of relying too heavily on the U.S. market. For America, it risked undermining the credibility of the promise that the country is open for business. In global supply chains, confidence is as important as capital. Once lost, it cannot be restored easily. The message from Georgia is clear. A policy built on pressure and unpredictability can just as easily backfire. Instead of attracting investment, it can drive it away. Instead of strengthening alliances, it can weaken them. The handcuffs and chains placed on engineers in Georgia may be remembered not as a triumph of enforcement, but as a turning point when America's strategy pushed an ally to question its trust.
Push too far. Push too far. Push too far by someone who's richer, someone who's more powerful, maybe a little more arrogant. I don't know. I can't think of an analogy.
At Replit, we believe everyone should be able to create software.
And we'll stop it again. I don't like this really kind of long, but see, Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation, put that blame on them. Because this is what it produced it. And Trump probably with his buddies in the White House, with J.D. Vance and a lot of them, this is what they did. This is part of the curse on America, what the guy was saying earlier in the video. This has cost American jobs. They wanted everybody to look like him. And they have an ego, and you see how the way they talk to some leaders when they come over there. You've seen it for yourself. Now, South Korea was about to risk billions of dollars, up to $30 billion. But the mindset of a white nationalist president caused this to happen. His arrogance caused this to happen. And he could have made apology himself instead of tweeting it. That was because he don't mind showing someone that committed a crime. He don't mind coming to take the podium for that or having the reporters in his office. But he can't have a reporter in his office to apologize to South Korea. And so he put it in a tweet. At least the Korean people come and talk to the reporters. And this is what happened when you put a rich man who don't know anything about dealing with different people and having a diverse people with respect to other nations. And I believe he has this mindset because I think they have that Western mindset that all the other people who are palm colored, he can look eye to eye with, but anybody that's not palm colored, he has this disdain for it. And I think these people pick it up. And you can tell by the way he talks to people. He's done it even with smaller countries. Now they ruined. Now the industry ruined. It costs more jobs. Now they're angry. And then maybe this might even affect military operations. Something like that can cause that. See, people don't think about this stuff. Just like you look over there how France lost their stuff. They had all them countries. And the countries on the continent of Africa kicked them out. They kicked them with the Western out. Replaced them with the Russians. Replaced them with the Chinese. And now other countries want to deal with them because they are tired of the terrorists of what the United States is doing. It's like they're being a bully. But you're going to bring the jobs back here. But the people don't have the qualifications to run the machines. They're not trained. That's why the Koreans came over here to train the Americans. And let me tell you what would have happened, ladies and gentlemen. Had this incident had went through and everything went smooth, that part of Georgia, with the 8,500 jobs, telling my friend this earlier, could have upgraded that area just like that. The police department could have gotten upgraded. The fire department got upgraded. Sewage and all water services, project services, waste services, all could have been up the services. But you got, and I feel bad for the man that tried to make it right that he planned to make, there was somebody representative to try to get the people over here. Like we have representatives in Ohio to try to get people over there, and you got, you have a redneck mentality woman gets paranoid because she sees something on the news, and there have been cases where there are some corporations, but they were small companies. This ain't not like a big major company. Hyundai is so they had to come by the rules. And then she didn't fact check this woman who called ICE on these people. She didn't fact check it. She's trying to not take blame. Now the people are traumatized. And they're going to take up for their own like we take up for our own. So you drop 30 billion up because your insecure little prick self couldn't see that. Because oh my goodness, we have all these different people. We got to get them out the country. And so he got ICE going out there instead of using judgmental ways, at least checking it out. They acting like, really they are acting like, in a way, sort of like soldiers, like some renegade soldiers over there doing that. Not checking and at least giving, and then find out what it was really about. Let's see if it's something legit. And they just went and Rambo up in that plant. Nice job, Trump. Nice job. Now you spoiled it. Now another country is going to get those jobs. And they're not coming back here. Why would they? You execute that. And this is the historical way that America did its natural citizens. Now she's showing how she do other citizens that don't fit the American look under the guise of patriotism. And those jobs, if these people were to think about this, it would kept them, the colleges would have kept the young people in the state so they don't have to leave the state of Georgia. They're not, you see, but they don't think like this. They're so busy because we're gonna have to change our language and everything. And they went into this whole hyper thing because they feel like their birth rate is losing. We can't have all these people in there. So they slowly execute. They start putting everybody. They start putting Arabs. They start putting Africans. They start putting Asians. They start putting South Asians, and all these people in the same category. What's your legal papers? Hold up. Wait a minute. Then you want they gotta come this way. You just ran people off. Even it was a man that was some Canadian, some man that come back from Canada. He got stuck up at the border. I shit you not. This should be a regulation as far as what to look for. Now, this looks bad on an international scale. And not only does you see the soybean, the farmers. The next thing. Project 2025. White Heritage Foundation. Gotta be American. Don't use common sense that you have to do international trade to make American progress. It has to look like its image all over. These other people, because they get paranoid. What language is you speaking? Are you trying to conspire against the country? And there are some people that did come legally in the country, but they could have checked it out. What language you'll speak? Let's call ICE. Man, if you second generation born people, you go talk to your parents in different languages, I'm telling you, man, you're going to have some Karen going to call the police on you. Because you speak a language. You could be speaking Spanish, French, whatever language. And it be some insecure, I guarantee it's going to be an American white person going to do this. They're going to call the cops on you. Because of the language you speak. If it ain't happened already, you about to experience. But it's someone with the MAGA mentality. It's not all white people. It's some with that MAGA mentality. And they're not used to adjusting their reality to the world. We still, and we have a president, unfortunately, is taking us backwards. And it's hurt the American people with his actions. Shown. So that's what the people see here, the people see around the world. It can go for me, but you better not do something because you got consequences. Oh, I'm going to take your visa. I'm going to take your passport because it hurts my feelings. And I'm rich and I can do what I want. I can control this military, do what I want. You make it more foes than friends. Real smart, Trump. Real smart. Anyway, I'm gonna let this go. All right, then, guys. Take care. Be blessed, and I pray that hope everything work out, and that some of us will survive the this administration. They're gonna find out next year when it comes to elections, though. Those who stand agreeing with Trump, watch this. People they tired. They fed up. You see what I'm talking about. Take care. Be blessed.